We're gonna compare Dayin versus Dmitry Klokov in the snatch, and we're gonna start right now. So we're gonna break down two of some of the greatest weightlifters of all time, at least as far as straight up numbers are concerned. Dmitry Klokov with that double knee wrapped up, and then we have Dayin at 81. This is from Colombia this past year at the World Championships. And so what I wanna do is sort of compare these two, look and see what are the differences that we see, what are the similarities that we see, and then what can we sort of pull away from these movements, these movement patterns, and then in turn apply to some type of training situation. So let's go. I want to try and sync these up and just play them in full speed. So we got 196 with the always entertaining Klokov, and then we have 171 at 81. So Klokov as a 105 back in 2011. Okay, so let's just break down real quickly, and I want to see here on this Klokov clip, do we have another angle? 196 is so heavy. There we go. I want to look at it from this angle. I think that's going to provide us with a little bit better insight. I really like the angle that we have here, and I want to say this is from hook grip, but I'm not positive. But whoever has these videos, again, someone like Hook Grip, All Things Gym, we gotta give them a ton of credit because no one is able to get this high quality of footage, at least back in the day. I mean, I don't even think the Klokov video here, it just shows us how phenomenal this stuff is for us to have access to such great footage. So what I wanna look at right away, okay, is gonna be what happens from the floor. Okay, so one thing people will say with Klokov, oh, he starts really upright, but it's more of a dynamic start, okay? So keep that in mind. So what's he doing here? Now right there, this would be where he starts, okay? And his butt, we wanna compare his hips to his shoulders, okay? So you can sort of see as his shoulders stay in place, his hips do start to rise a little bit quicker than his torso, and then he gets into this position here, okay? And then when the bar is right there at the sweet knees, this is where we're gonna say most lifts are lost, okay, right there. And this is where I'd say the start of no man's land happens. From this position right here to this position right here, okay, that is where most athletes end up losing their lift. Now, keep note of his back, his upper back, and his hips. Okay, they sort of rise really well together. They're coordinated very well, even to this point. And then what happens, that's when we get to, once we cover the kneecap, once we get over the kneecap, the chest starts to rise on Klokov, okay? The chest starts to rise. And then let's point out right here, he's in the hip, basically in the hip here with the bar, and he still has flat feet. And then he raises that heel, that right heel, starts to extend. Really, really crazy with that extension of his trunk, and then moves to a flat foot on the landing, right there in the landing position. If you notice, he doesn't entirely extend his knees here. He's got some unique movement there, but he's so dialed in. Now, okay, let's go back and look at Dayin. What is he doing off the floor into that knee position? Remember we said that no man's land position, that's what we see most athletes lose the bar. So right there. And what's happening here, he's coming up, okay, so he's coming up, hips are here. What's happening there with the trunk? Let's see if this works. Nope, doesn't work, so we can't really see what that angle is, but we can see this position here across his back. And does that chest come up with the hip? I would say it's coming up pretty well. And while that's coming up, you can see the knees. He's got pretty long tibias actually relative to the rest of his body, it seems. Knees clear back a bit. I'm gonna see that on Klokov. His knees also clear back a bit. So he starts with a bit more severe knee flexion, and then they come back right there as the bar is passing that knee. If I remember correctly, let's see if I zoom in here. I always thought Klokov had like right around this point, he had a little bit, let's see if we can do this. Yeah, little movement in that right heel. We come back to Dayin. If you remember back to the comparison between Quo and Aram though, Aramno right off the floor gets a little bit of a hitch with that heel. Let's see if we see anything along those lines with the heel from Lee Dayin, a little bit right off the floor, just a little bit right there, okay? So if we go looking right here, okay, try and focus on that. Just like right there off liftoff, and it right there again, right below the knee, okay? And you can see that on the right heel as well, just a hair popping through. I'd want to compare that to some of his older videos and see if that's consistent. But if we go back to looking at his torso rises pretty equally relative to his hips. Okay, what happens here? Knees on Lee Dayin tend to go out a little bit more, but then he comes right through, and when do his heels pop? Okay, he's still basically flat-footed, and the bar's in there. A pretty vertical chest position. Starting to see a little bit of the heel pop, not a ton, but just enough at that point. Then you get hip extension here, and then what happens from his knees? There we go. That's a nice finish. Wow, that's a really good finish. I'm gonna try and then what are his feet doing, okay? Let's pay attention to the feet. There's a lot of people, feet super plantar flex right here, okay? So we've got a nice plantar flex position, fast into that slide. So I'm gonna point this out. Watch that right foot, okay? Watch that right foot, right out, boom, flat foot landing. And when the flat foot landing occurs right here, bar is right about forehead position. Okay, notice he's much more, his chest did not go back as hard as Klokov. I want to see when Klokov grounds his heels, boom. Okay, very similar, look at that. Now he's back to, he's a little bit further behind. Klokov here is a little bit further behind the bar with his chest, but still pretty upright, obviously. Lee Dayin gets in that position. And if you watch here, stable, not much shaking there in the heels. Gets right out of that hole, super extended, nice, strong, tight position overhead. And then if we watch Klokov, boom, super crazy dorsiflexion. And if we remember, guys, the crazier your dorsiflexion can be, the more upright your trunk can be when you catch here. And you just look at that, like barely even takes a step forward with 196. I know he was on a ton of gas at this point. I think he got popped or didn't show up for training or show up for competition the next year in 2012, but still, nonetheless, I like watching the technique of dudes who have used, because you can see they can dial in their movement patterns a little bit more. They can get more volume. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying that's part of the reality of watching someone train or compete with performance enhancing drugs. So right here, you can see he gets a bit more behind the bar, still moves the feet right out from plantar flexion to dorsiflexion, and he's got just super crazy mobility, and then gets in that overhead position for Klokov. So the main differences that I would say from both of them, I think Klokov might be a little bit more stable from the floor to the knee. I think that one of the things that you'll see with both of them from below the knee to just past that kneecap is they're able to hold that position really well. And as the bar gets just over the kneecap, as the bar clears that kneecap, that's when that chest is going to start to rise on both of them. Okay, so that chest will start to rise, and then they're going to stay, especially Lee Dayin, really vertical on the finish. The hips extend, the knees extend. It's like boom, hips, knees together. Here, everything comes up, you know, a little bit behind the bar, get stable into that catch position. Both of them sort of slid their feet right out to that flat foot grounding. If you look at Lee Dayin, it's interesting because he doesn't have as much pronounced dorsiflexion as Klokov, but I believe that his tibias relative to the rest of his body are a bit longer. I think you could see that a little bit even with someone like Lasha. So I think when you have longer tibias, you don't need to have as much dorsiflexion. I could be wrong with that, but I do think that that's something that I've seen pretty consistently. So good positions right off the floor, hips and chest rise together. Once the bar covers the knee, the chest starts to rise a little bit faster than the hips. Hips extend early, then the good knee extension. Slide the feet into that flat foot grounding position from both of these athletes. This is a great way for you to execute the snatch. If you guys need help with your snatch technique, you want to become better weightlifters, head over to garagestrength.com. You can pick up a snatch improvement program today so that you can hit those monster PRs and become a better weightlifter. Because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.